When you examine the vast blessings of our nation, for sure, one of our greatest national treasures is our rich natural heritage. From the very inception of our country, Americans have been deeply connected on so many levels to the land. For the land and its bountiful resources have always provided the foundation for American life. And of course, before the first settlers ever arrived in North America from Europe, the vast native peoples thrived and prospered for thousands of years in the mountains and plains of the continent. From the warm breezes of the Gulf of Mexico to the frozen Alaska tundra far north of the Arctic Circle, the indigenous peoples understood and treasured the natural heritage and landscape they called home.
And with that history, and with that vast natural heritage, it is no wonder that recreating in the great outdoors is just part of our national DNA. The leisurely, rejuvenating effects of trout fishing was one of the many pastimes that drew city dwellers from their comfortable homes out into the countryside to the many lakes, rivers, and streams. The acquisition of a prize 3-pound bass or a colorful, streamlined rainbow trout was perhaps the initial goal that led the outdoor adventurer into the woods. But the rejuvenating impact of the great outdoors itself did wonders for the soul indeed. And though a string of freshly caught brook trout resulted in a sumptuous campfire cooked feast, it was the total experience in nature that the weekend explorers craved. For many, the sheer massive splendor of a glacier-covered mountain peak was a visual glimpse of heaven itself. The fresh ionized air filled the lungs of gasping hikers as they climbed the trails and ridgelines leading to a summit with panoramic vistas in all directions. Indeed, by the early 1900s, America possessed an emerging culture of outdoor enthusiasts who flocked to the forests and to the wilderness to partake in hunting, fishing, camping, and hiking adventures. The joy of casting that fishing line in the pursuit of a trophy fish in a spectacular mountain stream was reinforced with the overall experience of getting away from it all and leaving the trials and tribulations of town life back home. The outdoors became an escape from the everyday stresses of life, and once people discovered that fact, the more they wanted to pursue camping adventures in the wilderness. And thanks to a conservation-minded president, the national parks and national forests of our land were preserved and protected as America's great outdoor playground. President Theodore Roosevelt made it his mission to preserve our great outdoor splendors for future generations. Roosevelt hiked the Sierra Nevada mountains with naturalist John Muir and viewed the marvels of Yosemite and slept below the ancient majestic sequoia redwoods. He gleaned conservation ideas and information from a multitude of scientists and naturalists, including John Burroughs and Gifford Pinchot. And he ramrodded the Congress into passing legislation that devised a way to wisely manage and preserve the nation's natural wonders, nation's forests, the wildlife, and the watershed. And in keeping with the great spirit of protecting and enjoying the wild places, Teddy Roosevelt dedicated the Gardner Arch at the north entrance of our nation's oldest national park, Yellowstone. Even today, a placard on the arch says, "For the benefit and enjoyment of the people." and enjoyment of the people was indeed an understatement, as tourists and campers flocked to the park in their horse-drawn wagons, their Ford Model Ts and Model As, and they came to love this wonderful outdoor sport called camping. In those early years, a good surplus military tent was perfect as the temporary needed shelter for protection from rain and stormy weather. And there was a certain pride in setting up a tent beneath a beautiful, freshly scented evergreen pine tree near the shores of a crystal clear mountain lake, a lake where the entire family could seek relief from the warm summer air with a cool swim in the refreshing waters. New youth organizations like the Campfire Girls and the Boy Scouts gave young city dwellers a pathway to enjoy the great outdoors. And as that was occurring, the United States Congress created new national parks and protected more national forests, and of course, created more campgrounds for the people to enjoy. The concept of a camp on wheels was inherent in the trains of covered wagons that traversed the West as the pioneers followed the Oregon Trail to their promised land. The ox-pulled Conestoga wagon carried food, bedding, and supplies in the great western migration of settlers. So the concept of a wheel camper had already proven its worth way back in the mid-1800s. But the sheep herders across the western United States refined the covered wagon and created a more livable scenario, which included a cook stove, a bed, and a storage area for food and supplies. This helped them follow their flocks of sheep and not have to worry about taking down a tent and resetting up camp constantly. So the first tent trailers were kind of an imitation of the sheep herder's wagon. Usually a folding top made of canvas material perched upon a wheeled flatbed with sides. This wheeled mobile tent made camp setup much easier, and it served the purpose of keeping campers dry in stormy weather. But as far as deterring the inhabitants of the backwoods from trying to acquire a free meal, well, that occasionally just resulted in campers hightailing it to another campground, not so close to the troublesome bears. At about the same time period, hard-sided trailers started to appear. Some were homemade, and others manufactured in a factory. But the majority of these camp trailers were a completely self-sufficient unit, with most of the amenities of back home, and the hard-sided outer metal shell gave protection from the elements, the wildlife, and with screened windows, the mosquitoes and the bugs. And as the popularity of these camp trailers increased with the public, private campgrounds, trailer villages, and tourist camps sprang up across the nation. These private trailer camps were often efficiently laid out to maximize profits and park as many campers as possible into a given area. But most of the campers didn't seem to mind. It meant that there were other children for their own kids to play with, and people to socialize with. And besides, you could always slip inside your trailer and enjoy a delicious dinner with your family, protected from the rest of the world. And there was a comfy bed to sleep in, and if mom let you, a comfy bed to play on. Children simply loved the camping experience because it was different than the norm, and often it was in an exciting place with many family fun adventures. And as time progressed, some trailers got shinier, and some trailers got rounder, and some trailers definitely got longer. Before you know it, camping trailers began to flourish in all shapes and sizes for people of all shapes and sizes in campgrounds of all shapes and sizes. And for the non-camper who questions why anyone would ever want to pack up their trailer or their tent and leave behind the comforts of their home in the city, the answer is very short and very simple. Because it is fun. Hitch up your trailer, get on the open road, and go find an ancient tree or a golden sunset to gaze upon. Because as naturalist John Muir once said, "The mountains are calling and I must go." If you enjoyed this video, please take a second and hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and give us a comment, and maybe suggest what you would like to see in our video series.